Okay, welcome to our special Erev Shabbat class, Perashat Pequde. The question is it necessary to see God? Sounds blasphemous. Well, we've been through a string of parashiot, Teruma, to Saveh, skip one, Vayakhel, Pequde, and we've seen everything there is to see and heard everything there is to hear and learn about the Mishkan. We've seen the instruction from Hashem to Moshe, the instruction from Moshe to Bezalel, Aholiab, and the other craftsmen, to Am Yisrael in general. We've seen the building of the Mishkan and the fashioning of the curtains and the clothing. We've seen the inspection of the vessels and the curtains and the clothing, etc. And then we've seen HaKadosh Baruch Hu's command to assemble and to erect the Mishkan. And they did so on the first day of Nisan, and this entire process is finally over. And we've hit it. We've reached that point, and the parasha ends in incredibly dramatic fashion. Let's quote, we're in the last Perek Mem, the last number of Pesukim of the parasha, Pesuk Lamed Dalet. The Torah tells us as follows. Here's the dramatic scene. The cloud had covered tent of meeting, Ohel Moed. Let's assume it's the Mishkan. The honor of God filled the Mishkan. Moshe could no longer enter Ohel Moed because the Anan had settled, so to speak, it says dwelled upon the tent of meeting, the Mishkan. Uchbod Adonai malet ha-Mishkan. And because the honor of God filled the Mishkan. So let's assume for a moment, it's not unanimous, but many or most say that Ohel Moed is the Mishkan. What is this Kabod Hashem, the honor of God that fills? How can the honor of God fill something that fills the Mishkan? The Anan rests upon, are these two different entities? Anan, the cloud, Kibod Hashem, honor of God. Are they one and the same? How does the honor of God look? That it filled, apparently, it felt and looked a certain way because Moshe couldn't walk in because it was there. The Kibod Hashem, honor of God, was filling the vacuum of the tabernacle. And the truth is, this is not the only time that this or a similar scene had occurred and was presented to Am Yisrael. It is not even the first time. So let's do some exploring and let's find some similar scenes and help us try to uncover really a very enigmatic type of presentation the Torah is giving us. So the first time this occurs actually is in Perashat Mishpatim. To be exact, Shemot Perek Kaf Dalet, Pasuk Yod Zayin. This is when Moshe Rabbeinu first ascended Har Sinai for the 40 days and nights to receive the Torah. There it says that Moshe had gone up to the mountain. It says in Pasuk Tetvav actually, Vaychas Ha'anan et Hahar. There it is again, that cloud that is hovering or resting, not upon the Mishkan, of course, there was no Mishkan, upon the mountain, Har Sinai. And then Pasuk Tet Zayin tells us, Vayishkon kebod Adonai al Har Sinai, the honor of God. This is also dwelling on Har Sinai. So you have both the cloud and the honor of God, whatever that means, dwelling on Mount Sinai. It says that it covered the mountain for 6 days. And the seventh day, Hashem called Moshe from within and told him to enter. And finally, in Pasuk Yud Zayin, it says, "Umar'eh kebod Adonai ke'esh ochelet berosh hahar le'anei bnei Yisrael." And the vision, here it is, kebod Hashem, of the honor of God, was like a fiery, devouring fire at the head of the mountain, from the perspective into the eyes of all of Am Yisrael. So there again, we have both the Anan, the cloud. We have the Kevod Hashem, the honor of God. Honor of God couldn't fill something because we were talking about a mountain, so it was hovering, but it did, and this is something different and let's say additional to the scene at the end of our parasha, and that it had also took on the appearance of a devouring fire. All right. The next scene, so that would be the first. Our parasha, the first of Nisan, when the Mishkan was assembled, would be the second. The next one, which is similar, is very, very soon afterwards. It doesn't seem like it is, but it's really in Perashat Shemini, which is another 3 parashiot, but it's only a few days later, because it's the 7th of Nisan that the Mishkan opened for business, because the next 7 days after they erected it, Moshe Rabbeinu was doing the inaugural Korbanot. And in Parashat Shemini Vayikra, Perek Tet, chapter 9, Pasuk Kaf Gimal, after Aharon gave the blessing to the nation, we assume as Birkat Kohanim, the inaugurative Korbanot were completed. Moshe and Aharon came into Ohel Moed, the Mishkan, doesn't say what they did there, and they exited, and they blessed the nation. This is what Pasuk Kaf Gimal looks like. Vayebo Moshe v'Aharon Ohel Moed, vayeseu vaybarechu et ha'am. They blessed the nation. Here it is. Vayera kebod Adonai et kol ha'am. The honor of God appeared to the entire nation. It didn't mention the cloud, it mentioned the honor of God. The next wording of the following pasuk is Vatese esh lefnei Adonai, etc. And a devouring fire came from heaven, from God, and it devoured the korbanot. So there is the second time we see an association of fire to the honor of God, and there without the cloud. There's one other scene that I want to bring to your attention, and that is hundreds of years later, when not the Mishkan, when the Bet HaMikdash was constructed by Shlomo HaMelech, and it was also, the same time of year, the beginning of Nisan, and that opening day, it says as follows. This is from Melachim Aleph, Perek Het, chapter 8, Pasuk Het. I'm sorry, it's Pasuk, not sure what Pasuk it is. Vayhi beset HaKohanim mehakodesh v'ha'anan maleh et bet Adonai. It says when the Kohanim had left, they walked out from the initial services, the cloud of God filled the house, filled the Bet HaMikdash. So there is not the honor filling, but the cloud filling. And it says, V'lo yaklu HaKohanim la'amod l'sharet. Is this familiar to you? The Kohanim could not enter and service the Bet HaMikdash b'nei ha'anan, because of the cloud. And here is the whole other familiar term. Ki maleh kevod Adonai et bet Adonai. Because the honor of God filled the house of God. So here, both the cloud and the honor are not resting, but they're filling. So you do have these distinctions between these sources in terms of how the scene presented itself. You have some nuances. What is the common thread between all of these? Well, you have in almost everyone, both a cloud and both a kevod, an honor of God. You do have in 2 of them the association of the ash, of the fire, also with the honor of God. And it seems like the honor of God either always is accompanied by or takes the form of a cloud or fire. There is an incredible amount of analysis that is necessary for each one of those scenes, and a lot of unraveling if we were really going to do a scholarly analysis. But let's just start with the obvious philosophical question that hits us in the face. And that is, you can't really speak of the honor of God, the presence of God, in any type of physical terminology. It's inaccurate, blasphemous. It's categorized, technically speaking, as minut, as heresy. It's a form of heresy. If you try to assign a physical form to God or claim that you viewed God in any type of physical form, and here is the Torah speaking and mentioning, framing the presence of God in physical terms. We know that God, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, has no actual physical manifestation in this world. These are some of the tenets of Jewish faith and belief. God is not physical. And therefore, one cannot believe this. And therefore, it's hard for us to understand what we've just read numerous times and to swallow and to understand in any literal way. And you could almost say that we're prohibited to understand what we've just read in a literal manner, as to say that the essence of God is what appeared in those forms and what the people viewed. So how do we handle this? Let's let some of the commentaries weigh in on these terminologies: honor of God, cloud of God, etc. The Rambam in the the Moreh Nebuchim speaks of the fact that this word maleh, we saw filling, right? We saw the honor of God, and our parasha fill the Mishkan. We saw both the honor and the cloud of God fill the Bet HaMikdash later on in history in Shlomo HaMelech's time. And he says that the term of maleh, filling, is not physical filling, and he goes to pains, based a lot on Targum Unkelus in the Moreh Nebuchim, to explain how all these terminologies that seem to be describing God, they're anthropomorphic, they're really not literally describing God. Heaven forbid you should think so, and that they are all meaningful and symbolic. And he says, maleh, filling, refers to the fact that the Torah testifies to a completeness of God, to a perfection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, maleh, if you say something is filled, full, you could say it's pretty complete, depending on what you're referring to. So if you say that there was a filling of God, so to speak, or his manifestation in something, it's referring to the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a complete, perfect entity, a flawless entity. And according to this, when you say that the honor of God fills the Mishkan, it basically is saying that the very existence of the Mishkan and or the Bet HaMikdash and the service in it is our testimony to the perfection and the completeness of the one and only God. Maleh et HaMishkan. The honor, the existence of God is perfect and complete. It is really not a vision, but more of a phenomenon that testifies to the essence and the existence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yet still, they saw something. They saw a cloud. The Ramban and other Mefarshim, but I believe the Ramban deserves the credit for being the starter of this track, speaks of the Anan, the cloud, the Esh, the fire, the Kavod Hashem, the honor of God, not really as separate entities. The Anan, he says, encompasses the Kavod Hashem, whatever that means. The cloud is sort of a casing, an encasement, a cover for this thing called honor of God. And he says that honor of God is this type of hidden light, perhaps that's where the fire comes in. And this hidden light, this or, represents, the Ramban speaks about this in the beginning of creation, and Hachamim in the Midrash, the source of this concept, this or elyon, quote unquote, a heavenly elevated light, a godly light that was created when God created the world. This is referred to in terms of the reward that awaits the righteous in the future. And again, it's very enigmatic, mysterious in and of itself. But this light, this heavenly light, this godly light, is what the honor of God is, and it's wrapped and enveloped by the cloud. The cloud was something that we actually saw, and the heavenly light, which is in the midst of the cloud, is something that we can see, cannot see, and it's obviously conceptual, powerful, deep, but not tangible, just conceptual. And then finally, there's the Abarbanel. Abarbanel is a very long, thorough presentation on the matter. And he really goes through, he painstakingly proves that the Anan and the Esh, the fire and the cloud, are not physical, and they're very metaphoric. He says the cloud itself is not even something that was really seen. It was just symbolic and metaphoric. What do you get from all of this? What's the central theme, the common thread that you can take from all of these commentaries? And I believe it's obvious. And that is whether we're talking about honor of God, fire, cloud of God, all of them agree to that there is a symbolic manifestation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world. And according to most, where the Anan, at least, the cloud was something physical, and the fire was something visual, it means that God took something physical and somehow his existence manifests itself in a symbolic way in this world. Meaning, I'm not looking at God right now. I am looking at something that symbolizes God, and God's existence decided, his decision was to manifest it in this form, somehow in this image that we all can see. And now that we've cut through some of the mystery, we can now ask what is possibly the more rudimentary, basic, but more necessary question. And that is, why does God have to create physical symbols? Don't we have faith in God, in his essence, in his being and existence, based on our innate, deep faith in a creator? Why do we need these physical manifestations? Why do I need something that I can see and almost feel symbolize HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Why is this necessary? So I want to offer two possibilities. One is, I would call it somewhat passive, and the other more active. The passive possibility is that there is a need in life to draw lines, mankind vis-a-vis God. There is a need to draw lines. And what do I mean by that? I mean that there is a danger in getting too close to God, intellectually, right? This is a struggle for those of us who are committed and deep. It's a real struggle that we try to get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and in doing so, when we conceptualize, when we philosophize, we sometimes cross a line into something that is so tempting, which is a possible physical symbol of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it's very dangerous, obviously. And Hachamim really warn of the danger of such a thing. We know from stories in the Gemara, the Pardes, we know certain Hachamim entered the Pardes, the garden. One died, never came out. The other came out and he went crazy, right? Because they were at such an intellectual height and a deep connection and understanding of God that they went for it. They went for the next level and the next step. And it was dangerous. We know that Yochanan Kohen Gadol served for 80 years as the Kohen Gadol in the Kodesh Kodashim. And at the end of his days, he went berserk. He lost it. He lost it. He lost his faith. It's almost impossible to understand. But there are the dangers of getting too close to the fire. You're liable to get burnt. And so therefore, what does the Torah do to us? The Torah basically says, okay, your creator, your father, you believe, you know, this is not him right now, it's a cloud. But I want you to know, don't get anywhere near it. You can't enter the Mishkan. It's clogged, so to speak. The honor of God, the cloud of God, there's a scary fire devouring. This is not for you. This is hands off. This is, don't even get close to the edge of the subway line there, where the track is. Follow the colored lines and step away, step back. Understand from a distance that you have an innate faith in God, but don't go too close. Don't play games with that faith. There is a line that everyone at their own intellectual and scholarly understanding needs to obey and not cross. That is, I believe, one possible lesson for why God needs to, so to speak, create physical symbols for himself. It's a keep away symbol. But the second one is more important, and I'd call it an active reason. And that is that the symbolic presence of God is a real one. It's not real because there's anything physical about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Haz v'Shalom. But there's something tangible that you could detect about God's existence. We see this in other realms. We see this with a mizvah, where you could have a physical mizvah, take a piece of masa. Right now, if I ate it for breakfast in the Bet Torah breakfast table, it's a cracker. It has no significance besides my nourishment whatsoever. It means nothing in terms of its actual physical being. In a month and a half from now, it's going to be an activity that's done at a certain time. It's going to elevate our souls to a higher level when we chomp on that cracker. So you see, there's something about symbolism that can become very tangible based on time, sometimes based on place. You can communicate with God anywhere and he hears you, connect to him. But somehow we feel when we get close to a certain place, if we go to Koto Hamadari, we're in a certain place. We feel that symbol gives us a feeling that there's something greater going on over here. And so we really know there's this thing called Shekhinah, which is a discussion in and of itself, but represents the real, the tangible, the active, the blatant presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there were times, great times, in the beginning of our history, and unfortunately, they didn't last long enough. But in those great times, the Shekhinah existed in its strongest form. The Mishkan, during the first Beit HaMikdash, where these times in our history, Hashem did us a great favors with the symbolism. He showed us, he demonstrated it with physical but tangible and real symbols that I am here. Hello, I exist. I'm out there. I'm everywhere. I'm in your lives. If you just look over there, you're not going to see me, but you're going to see something that is an eye-opener. And with that, you'll know me. You'll understand me better. You'll connect to me more because I am real. And therefore, in these great times that we were honored to be part of in the history of the Jewish people, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us tangible physical symbols to make us understand that there is a God. And sometimes you can actually feel him. You can't see him, but you almost feel that you do. You detect his realness, his actuality. You live and you're embraced by his presence. And so that even though that physical, that distinction that we have, that we did have, to have a physical symbol, we're no longer privy to. It's no longer the fortune and the distinct privilege of our lives, but the reverberations of those times, the echo, the domino effect is still there. And we know because of those physical symbols that sometimes you can just feel him. You know him. You connect to him more. Whether it's something that you're doing, something that you're saying, a place that you are, you feel him there even more. And that innate connection that we have, our neshama, that spark, not the devouring fire, the flame that we have inside, connects at that moment in that time. We feel Shekhinah, we know his presence, we know he's real, and we know he's there thanks to the help of the physical symbols in our Perashat. Shabbat Shalom and Chodesh Tov.